You probably come across this channel because you're interested in the Sonible Smart EQ4. Maybe you purchased it, maybe you're thinking about purchasing it, or maybe you're wondering how does it compare with flagship EQs like Fabfilter Pro-Q3. Well, I bought the Sonible Smart Essentials bundle back in December and I've been using it on various projects for the last 2 or 3 months. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the things that I love about it. I'm going to compare some of the features to Fabfilter Pro-Q3, and I'm going to talk about some things that I don't like about it. So if you're on the edge and you're thinking about buying it, or you're wondering what sort of features does it offer you and how does it compare with other EQs, sit tight. We're going to jump right in. I hate to start on a negative note, but I have to state the obvious. As you can see, I have my project open up in Cuebase 13. Usually I do my tutorials in FL Studio, but unfortunately, the Sonible Smart EQ4 is having instability issues in FL Studio. So if you're an FL Studio user, just as a heads up, the grouping features, which we're going to talk about today, are not stable in FL Studio. And I've reached out to Sonible and they said they're hoping to fix it in their next release. So for this tutorial, we're going to do comparison in Cuebase. But again, for the plugins themselves, you can use them in any DAW. So let's talk about some of the common features they have at first. Both of these allow you to add up to 24 filters. So if you can keep clicking on these, you'll see you can go nuts with it, really. You can add up to 24 filters. Same thing in the EQ4. Double clicking anywhere on the EQ adds a standard bell filter. So that's great depending how many filters you like to use. Generally speaking, I don't think I've ever reached 24 in any single EQ instance, but you do have that available for you. Let's clear and then go to default. One thing that I do like about the Pro-Q3, which unfortunately the Sonible Smart EQ4 does not have, if you click at either the top or the bottom of your EQ, it'll either add a low cut or a high cut filter. Whereas if I add anywhere on the EQ4, it'll just add a standard bell filter. So it's convenient because it saves me a click. As you can see here, I have to click and change the filter to a low cut, or up here, change the filter to a high cut. So it does save me that click. And if you're not at the very bottom of the Pro-Q3, but close enough to it, or not at the very top, but close enough to it, it'll actually add a shelf, which again is convenient because typically if you're within a certain range, at the bottom, you want a low shelf. And then again, if you're at the top within a certain range, it'll add a shelf. So that's convenient. Whereas here, again, everywhere you click, it's a bell filter, and then you have to change it to whatever you want. There's also more filters available in the Pro-Q3, so that's something to be mindful of. You have your bell, low shelf, low cut, high shelf, high cut, your notch filter, band pass, tilt filter, I think. This is the tilt, I think. Yeah, tilt shelf, and then your flat tilt. So both of these are tilt filters. And here you have your bell, low shelf, low cut, high shelf, flat top filter, and then your tilt filter. So you do have a few more filters available in the Pro-Q3, but honestly, the Sonible Smart EQ4 is sufficient for me. I think the filters they have available are more than enough. When it comes to usability, when adding a filter, I do prefer that you can make it dynamic fairly easily within the Smart EQ4. So if I add a filter here and then I switch it to dynamic, it's one click here. Whereas here, I have to click it and then you can click this drop down and say make dynamic, or you can come down here and roll down the dynamic range and it automatically makes it dynamic. So it does save you that extra click. So it is a little bit more convenient in the Sonible Smart EQ4. It's just one click away. Also, if you want to change it from stereo to mid to side, it's right on the filter itself. Whereas here you have a drop down and then you go to stereo placement and then you can pick mid, side, left and right. But you do have the option for left and right in the Pro-Q3. You do not have the option for left and right inside of Sonible Smart EQ4. So that's something that I think out of all of the EQs that I use Ozone, Neutron, Sonible, Pulsar ones. I think they're one of the only ones, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, that have both not just mid and side, but also left and right. So if I just want to take out certain frequencies, if let's say you have some vocals or you have a guitar that is panned to the right and you have this EQ on an instrument that is taking up the full stereo space, like the full stereo width, left and right, then you can duck out certain frequencies only in the right or only on the left. So that's pretty convenient. Another convenient thing that the Smart EQ has is these options where you can have different settings. So if you don't want to lose your setting, let's say you've made some certain changes and especially if you're working late into the night, sometimes you'll have something going that sounds great and the more you change it, the worse it sounds. If you have it sounding great, but you still want to fine tune it, what you can do is just click on this where it says 1, drag it over to 2, and now I've made a copy of that. I can adjust it, make adjustments to it. If my adjustments suck, I always have my initial copy, and you can make 8 of these, whereas on the Pro-Q3 you only have 2. So you have A, B, you can copy it from A to B and then make your adjustments accordingly. So depends how many adjustments you make, how many versions you want to have saved. It is pretty convenient to have a bunch of them. One thing that the Smart EQ4 also lacks that I do not like is you cannot sidechain. So let's say I have right here, I'm going to play my guitar. So if it's playing here and you see I have a dynamic filter here, if I want this to be triggered by a sidechain, then I can just enable sidechain. I added the pad as my sidechain in Cuebase. You can do the same thing in FL Studio. You can just sidechain it. And then here, when I click on the filter itself, you'll see here, I have this option that says auto, but I can change it to sidechain. So this filter now is being triggered by the signal that's coming from the sidechain. You cannot do that in Sonible Smart EQ4. You cannot trigger this by a sidechain. Another feature that the Pro-Q3 has that Smart EQ4 does not have is the ability to analyze the signal of another channel that has Pro-Q3 on it. So you can see here under Analyzer, I have pre and post. So it's analyzing the signal pre and post the changes that I make, the EQ changes. But I can also analyze the signal of other channels. So you see here, now I'm looking at the signal and I can see that there's some masking that's occurring here, and I'm going to talk about masking in a second. But where the Smart EQ4 lacks the analysis of other channels, where it shines is the ability to create groups to address that unmasking. And this was the main reason why I bought it for. I will get into the smart features in a second here. You can see it says universal and I have this record button. I'll talk about that in a second. But for me, the reason why I wanted the Smart EQ4 was for this grouping option. And so far, it's the only EQ that has this. So I have the Smart EQ4 on my guitar instrument and also on a channel called Blues Sample. So I have a blues sample that's playing behind, and I can say create a new group, and I'm just going to leave it as a new group, and then I can say add instance. Why is that? So if you just saw right there, I'm actually going to leave that in the video specifically to show some of the instabilities even in Cuebase. So when I created the group, it did not see the other channel initially, and I had to open it separately. That's a weird bug. So you can see here both my blue sample and guitar are within the same group. And where this really shines is once I do learn all, so as you can see here, now that it analyzed both of the signals on the blue sample channel and also my guitar channel, it created a filter that ducked out certain frequencies and boosted certain frequencies based off of the sonic information available to the app. So if I move the guitar and say I want the blue sample to have a priority and I move the guitar to the middle, you'll see it'll duck down certain frequencies. You can actually see it even here. And what it's doing is ducking out certain frequencies to make space for the blue sample, because the blue sample has a lot of information within that spectrum, and the filter automatically ducks certain things to make space for that. So this is where I said Sonible Smart EQ4 really shines in regards to unmasking. So if you have a lot of information within a certain frequency spectrum, let's say it's in your mids, so between, 400 to 1,500 or whatever, it could be from 1,000 to 6,000. There's a lot of information between two channels. And if you're saying, hey, I want you to give priority to my blue sample over my guitar, the intelligent EQ is smart enough to duck certain frequencies based off of what's in that group. See? So there's a lot of information here. You can see right here where I'm moving my mouse, and that's why I duck that down on the guitar. Now, if I think it's too much, I can lower that down. If I want to increase this, or if I want to change where it's adjusting, I can do that. So I can narrow that adjustment so it's only adjusting a certain frequency range or on the whole spectrum. The other thing to notice, whether I look on my left side or the right side, it has this TR plus GR mode. And what that is, the filter itself is ducking or boosting certain frequencies based off of the information on the track and also what other information is within that group So if I say, hey, I only want this filter to make changes to this EQ, so to change certain frequencies only based off the group, then I can change it to group mode. So the only thing that this filter is doing now, I'm going to change it on both, is making adjustments based off of where that channel is sitting in the group. So if I move the guitar up and the blue samples down, you'll see that it adjusts the frequencies accordingly to make space for each other. If you have track plus group, basically it uses their smart EQ to analyze your signal. And if this is, again, a guitar, I can say, hey, this is guitar electric, and then it makes additional adjustments, and then you can use its smart features. Personally, I don't use their smart features, but it is available. So if you do want to use it as such, you can do that. One thing that the track mode does, so when you do enable that and you do use your smart capabilities, you can make the EQ adaptive. So if you see here, if I increase this, see it adjusts as the signal is playing, it'll adjust that EQ. So again, that's using their smart features. You can make it fully adaptive or just a little bit. So as that signal changes, it's ducking out certain things, it's boosting certain things. So if you do want to use the smart features, this one shines far greater than Pro-Q3 in that regard. But if you're like me and you don't really care for the smart features, you just want a solid EQ and you like the grouping function, then this is what I use it for. So I don't use the smart features. I just use this group mode, and I have group mode on both of them. Where I've used this the most is on orchestral tracks. So if I have a whole orchestral section, I have strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion. I like to add them all within a group and say, hey, give priority maybe to the strings on the front. I can move things around and adjust it accordingly. And I love that for the unmasking feature. Now, let's talk about how we would unmask in Pro-Q3. Really, the way to unmask in Pro-Q3 is looking at that analyzer, and then you'll see certain hot spots as it plays. I can see there's a little bit of redness coming over here. So what you can do is, let me actually disable this. What I can do is create a filter. I can see it right here. I can make it dynamic. And if I want, I can sidechain it and have my sidechain trigger that filter. So it only ducks down when that sidechain plays. So that's how you would address unmasking in the Pro-Q3. So with all that being said, is the Smart EQ4 worth it? If you're using FL Studio, I wouldn't buy it right now. Just being fully transparent. It's having instability issues. They seem like they're going to fix it, but if you're looking to have something that you can use right away, this will give you some challenges. So all this group section that you saw me create, next time you close your project and reopen it in FL Studio, it'll be gone. If you're using other DAWs and you really like this grouping feature like me, then I do personally think it's worth it, especially if you get the Smart Essentials bundle when it's on sale. I think they just have a sale now, or they just had a sale. I got mine on sale around Christmas time. I think it was like $150 or something like that. For that price, for their smart limiter, compressor, and their smart EQ, I thought it was worth it. Their limiter is pretty comprehensive. It's pretty transparent. I use it on a lot of tracks. Their smart EQ I have not touched, especially in FL Studio, since probably January. Once it started having those instability issues and I started opening up my projects and noticed that the grouping function was all messed up, I stopped using it in FL Studio. I still use it on my projects in Cuebase. So sometimes I make music in Cuebase. Sometimes I do in FL Studio. But yeah, does the Smart EQ replace Pro-Q3? For me, it has not. Is it a solid EQ? I do like it. I like its ease of use. I like its UI. I think it's very clean. But yeah, I hope this information was helpful. I just wanted to create this video because I've been getting a lot of questions from people about the Sonible Smart EQ4. I have used it in certain videos and I've been getting a lot of feedback about it from others. So hopefully this information has been helpful to you. Let me know, do you use this? Have you purchased this? Are you happy with it? I know I've had some that said they're disappointed with it. Let me know where you stand. Is this the best EQ for you? Is it the worst? But whichever way it is, as always, I hope this has helped you, and I hope that this video inspired you to go and make some music. Peace.